people start beating you down. Your parents, your friends, your enemies, they say, oh, you'll never be able to do that. That was one of the way I'm different from other people. They never beat me down. I knew I was going to get rich. I didn't know how.
What gave you that confidence to know that that would happen?
I've changed tens of thousands of people's lives. And that drives me every day.
I think some people have that confidence, but then they realize that it's harder than they thought. You know, you founded two of the largest tax franchises in the United States. I was reading that one sold for over $480 million back in 1997. And so I can't be the first person to wonder and think and ask you, what keeps driving you to work? Like you don't need to work, right?
Yeah, the second one also became a $500 million company. So, and when I was a kid, I was cocky. I grew up poor, but when I was in high school, I knew I was going to get rich. I didn't know how, but I knew I was going to get rich, and my plan was just to make a few $1 million and retire and enjoy life. And then I realized the treasure at the end of the rainbow is anticlimactic. The journey is the joy. And I've brought in 5,200 franchisees who had hundreds of and thousands of employees. And I've changed tens of thousands of people's lives. And that drives me every day to change lives, improve the world.
You said as a kid that you grew up poor.
Yes.
But you knew that you were going to be rich one day.
Right.
And make a lot of money. How did you know that? Where did that come from, stem from? What gave you that confidence to know that that would happen?
You know, I'm not positive, but I had about 25 years ago, I ran into a friend that I hadn't seen since college in 25 years. So, and I said to him, if you could remember what was the number one thing you remember most about me? And he said, you're the most confident person I ever met. So I've always been self-confident. I've always, you know, I guess, Tariq, it comes down to this. Let me say it this way, that I was reading or listening to a radio broadcast by Kathy Lee a few years ago, and she had written a book. And in the book, one of her chapters is The Age of Bliss. And she talks about that in life, everyone thinks they can be a superstar until they're 7, 8, 9 years old. You can be Superman, you could be Batman, you could be President of the United States, you could be anything. And then people start beating you down. Your parents, your friends, your enemies, they say, oh, you'll never be able to do that. And she said, a lecture to adults, you guys need to get back to an age of bliss. And I realized when I heard her interview that was one of the way I'm different from other people. They never beat me down. I've lived an age of bliss where I thought I could do anything.
But did you ever have an obstacle early on that started to create doubt or uncertainty that will I really be able to make this happen? Or it's harder? I think some people have that confidence, but then they realize that it's harder than they thought. So did you ever have a moment like that?
Well, God doesn't put anyone here to escape. I've faced plenty of obstacles and overcome incredible adversity, taking pummeling and beating, and I was eviscerated, had lots of problems, but I've never, ever had any 24 hours go by where I thought I couldn't do it. When and I think maybe part of that is my earlier success, but I started as a great chess player when I was 9 years old. And so when chess, you're always thinking about, well, if they do that, I'll do that. And if they do that, I'll do that. And so I've always been blessed with great vision. And I've never never been beaten down. When they beat me down, I always get back up.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a firm believer that I used to travel the country and speak for Tony Robbins. Tony would say that 80% of success in anything, whether it's business, health, family life, 80% of your success was mental and 20% was strategy. And his kind of supporting theory around that was, well, everyone knows the strategy. You can look up the strategy online pretty easily. Right? It's the mental side. It's like, okay, if my strategy is to be in great shape, I already know I got to take in less calories that I burn. I got to go to the gym. But it's like in those moments of laziness, feeling tired, lack of discipline, what happens in those moments? So was there ever a time where you felt like your mental side of it was at a threat at all? I mean, you're saying you like after 20, like you went no longer than 24 hours, but I'm just trying to understand, like, what were you saying to yourself in those moments?
I'm under every adversity. I'm I never spend any time on what if, that if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't made that mistake, then what would happen? It's a waste of time. So I'm always looking at the future, and I'm the most forgiving person you ever meet, with employees and enemies and detractors. But I'm always looking for, this is where I am today. That's where I'm going to go. And thinking about different strategies. And if this happens, I do that. If that happens, I do this. I take this path. I'm always looking for the path to the goals that I'm after. And believe me, I've been beaten down. And in my book, I talk about some of them. You know, I have a book that available to your listeners if you like it, that I'll send them one for free. But it's called I Compete. And I just love competition, and I give it my all. And again, they never discouraged me into stopping.
Now, you founded Jackson Hewitt, right?
Yes.
And then you went on to sell that in 1997, and
Correct.
then in 1998 you started Liberty Tax, right? And that was that the one where you acquired a Canadian? Which one was the one where you acquired a Canadian franchisor and then brought it to the U.S.?
That was Liberty Tax.
Liberty Tax.
We acquired them and opened in January of 98.
98.
Right.
So my question when I read that, my first question was there not a non-compete in place or anything like that? Like, how did that process work?
Yeah, Jackson Hewitt was a public company, and they were in all 50 states, but they weren't in Canada. And I started working for H&R Block when I was at the University of Buffalo, and which is a stone's throw from Canada. So I had done Canadian tax returns. So they never occurred to them. And of course, I would have never agreed to a non-compete that covered a place where they didn't have any offices. So Jackson Hewitt wasn't in Canada. They've never gone to Canada. Liberty Tax is still a strong number 2 player, top 100 retail chain in Canada. And then after my non-compete ended in the U.S., then I came back in a big, big way in the U.S.
If you enjoyed this short clip from the podcast, you can check out another short clip right here. Or if you want to watch the full episode of this podcast, you can watch that here. And remember, knowledge is not power. It's applied knowledge that's power. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.